Hi, students. This is your first storm while you're at CSU, the first hurricane been through, most likely, since all of you are in your first semester. This happens, it hasn't happened every year. It happens nearly every year, though. It's quite frequent that we have some hurricane or storm that comes through and uh, forces us to put classes online. And the reason why we have to move it online is because the bridge is closed to traffic. The travel to the campus becomes dangerous for our commuters and for our faculty, and so we move the classes online. And so today, we're just going to watch this video. I still want you to do the workshop and discussion board that's under each week, just like you've been doing. So try to keep up with those and watch this video. I hope it's helpful. And then keep doing the reading in the book. I hope you're finding this book helpful. It really is a good book for college students. The Teach Yourself How to Learn, because learning is it's so important in college. That's what you're here to do. You're not here just to get a degree. You're here to learn some things, and the reality is you don't really always learn how to learn in high school. So a study found 58% of high school seniors spent less than 6 hours each week doing homework, but of those, still 96% or so got an A or B in their class. So high schools are giving out A's and B's for students, but because they're trying to say, well, look, the teachers know how to teach, but they're not really teaching the students how to learn. So they got A's or B's without really learning, because 6 hours a week is just not enough time to put into school, especially for college. So you're going to have to work and study differently this semester. You're starting to discover that. Some of you have already discovered that. Some of you are now starting to discover that as the midterms come. But the best way to do this is to be diligent and to work each day. There's a difference between studying and learning. So the proverb, let the wise listen and add to their learning. Let the discerning get guidance. Foolish people often think they know everything already, but the wise are seeking to learn. So I encourage you, as you are in your classes, be acknowledging, I have some things I still need to learn. You're not just studying for the exam, but you're trying to transform the way you're thinking. You're trying to learn some new things about the Bible, about Hebrew, about the biology, about philosophy, about all the classes that you're in. You need to be striving to learn, not just studying for the exam. And it makes a difference if you do approach it that way. Paul writes to Timothy, encouraging him to be diligent to present yourself approved to God as a workman who doesn't need to be ashamed, but can accurately handle the word of truth. It's hard work to learn, and it's hard work to learn the Bible. Even if you're familiar with the Bible, it's hard work to really get to know the Bible. You're discovering that. But put your whole self into it. Be diligent and work to learn. Okay, so I'm going through this presentation. I'm going to admit I borrowed this presentation from the Student Success Center, and so there's going to be some slides we slide through kind of fast. What's the difference between studying and learning? Think about, is there a difference? I think you can study things and not really learn it. And then sometimes there's deep learning where you're really coming to understand something, and then you're just surface level memorizing something. Your brain can learn to parrot things without really understanding it, right? So I want you to learn how to study, and you need to strive to be studying so that the way you're learning is is bringing deep learning and true understanding. So today I want you to be thinking about that. So deep learning, what is deep learning? It involves making connections between what you're trying to learn and what you already know. In fact, all learning really is that. Learning is connecting, and it's transforming the connections that you already have. Transforming the connections or making new connections. And when you learn something deeply, it's stored by linking together with other things in your mind. So you need to be, when you're learning something, be making as many connections as you can to other things that you already know. So taking notes, writing about it, thinking about it, the different ways, the more different ways you can study something will help you to make different kinds of connections to it. And so, yeah, the different stages in the memory process here is, I don't think we need to spend too much time on this. Mainly because my head's in the way. I can't quite figure out how to get out of the way. There we go. I got out of the way. Okay. Well, so sensory perception. Well, how you see something, how you hear it. When you're in lecture and you're hearing like me, and you're hearing my voice now, you're perceiving it. Some things you're hearing and taking in, and other things are going. Whew. You need the effect. They go, or they go in here and right out there. So because and you have to pay attention. You see, so you have to devote attention to what you're hearing and perceiving, and then it goes into your working memory, and then it goes. The next stage is when you're storing it. And moving it into a more long-term memory, and you do that by linking it with other memories and connections. But then the final goal is when you are then retrieving it. And actually the retrieving is the most important part. If you want to train your memory so something goes into the memory in a meaningful way, you need to retrieve it. And that doesn't mean you look it up in your notes. It means you pull it out of your brain. So that's where flashcards or test-taking things is helpful, but you can't look at the back right away. You train your mind to retrieve something. Or you see one thing, and then from that, you follow the connection to the other thing, and you're strengthening that connection as you're making that connection. So rather than just passively reading something or passively hearing something, you're actively trying to retrieve it from your mind. So after you've heard it, you've thought about it, made some connections, but then a little later, you try to retrieve it. You try to remember that information again. And when you successfully remember it, it strengthens that connection, so it will be there the next time. So you want your study strategies to help you to remember things. So make those connections and practice actively recalling things. So what we're doing right now, actually, we're thinking about how we're thinking. The metacognition is thinking about how to think. And so it's helpful to sometimes to reflect about your own thinking. If there's a class you're struggling in, well, think about how you are thinking about that class. Think about how are you learning. What are you doing to learn, and how are you approaching the problems in the class? How are you approaching the studying in the class? And think about your mental processing of things. And then decide, am I connecting what's in the class with other things? Is it making sense to me? Am I just like spouting off what the teacher is saying, or am I getting a deeper understanding of the concepts in this class where it makes sense and I can actually speak about them? And so if you want to learn more deeply, you want to be thinking about how you're learning and how you're studying, and that's going to help you to be a better learner. And sometimes you'll find you're not doing very well in it, but then that gives you a chance to adjust. Yeah, so don't think of learning as not just absorbing information, but you are taking that information and maybe transforming it into something that makes sense to you. So if you're just like memorizing a phrase or a concept or a definition, but it doesn't really make sense to you, you don't really know it, right? You have to be able to say it, to restate it in a way that this makes sense. It's a way so it's just hearing what I'm saying doesn't help you. But when you can express what I'm saying in your own words, now you're kind of showing you understand it. And so here, if yeah, try reading this passage right here. Let's see, how do I get out of the way again? Nope, now I'm really in the way. That's the wrong one. No. Goodness sakes. There we go. All right, are you able to read this? It's kind of neat that you can read it because almost every single word in here is misspelled, isn't it? It's misspelled, but you can still make sense out of it because your brain is adding order to it. This is also why when you write a paper, it's hard to edit your own paper because your brain will like fix your mistakes for you. And it's good to have an outside editor or a friend or I was going to say a wife. I don't think many of you are married. It's really nice though. Actually, it makes her. She didn't like reading my stuff, but having somebody else read your stuff is very helpful. But the point here though isn't about editing your papers and looking for spelling mistakes. It's for you to see your brain can reorders things as it comes in, and you need to be conscious that you are reordering and try as you understand what you're reading and what you're hearing. Your brain's doing the same thing as processing it to understand it, and so be comparing what you're learning with what you already know. And a good question to ask is, what did I just hear? What does that remind me of something else I've heard before? Or when I'm reading this, is there anything else I've read that's similar to that? And then now you're starting to make some links and some connections, and that's going to help you to learn better. Oh, I'm back in the frame. So to help you make connections in lecture, before class, there's some things that you can do. So doing reading before class, if you look up, like for this class, well, you could do the reading. Like is working through this book, Teach Yourself How to Learn. So you could do that, but there's not a test at the end of this class. This class is to help you with your other classes. But your other classes is really important that you come prepared for the lecture. And so if you do the reading, look at the syllabus. Some professors have more detailed syllabuses than others. But think about what did he say the last time, and do a little preparation into the topic for that day. That's going to help you to understand and engage with the lecture better. So I think before you come to any class, you should look back. What did we study last time? Look at what are we going to study this time, and do a little pre-thinking and pre-reading about that topic. You might not read a lot, you won't have time for it, but thinking a little bit on it is going to help you be ready and to absorb the lecture. better. It was so more practical thinkings here. So you get to class early, and while you're sitting there waiting, then review notes from before. That help get it fresh in your mind. Or skim over the book, the reading that the reading that you'd already read because you read it last night. But you might open it again and skim through the headings, so it's kind of getting fresh in your mind again. That's going to help you. You know, where you sit makes a difference. It helps you pay attention better. And who you sit by, even more important. Now, so paying attention in a lecture, your body language kind of tells you whether you should pay attention or not. If you kind of lean back and slouch down, you're going to fall asleep much more than if you're keeping your core tight and you're kind of doing. Sometimes I have to do little exercises. Like I make my calf muscles like tighten up and release just to keep the blood pumping up to my brain. It's hard to pay attention sometimes, but your physical posture can make a difference. And just keep an eye on your syllabus in all of your classes. See what's the topic that's coming up, and sometimes your professor's going to vary from that topic, right? Or get a little off schedule. But still, I think it is going to help you to be conscious of where you're going in the class, and that's going to help you to understand the lectures. Now, some professors are better at this than others, but we try to give cues when there's something important in lecture. I think I unconsciously do it when I know something's on the test, and I might repeat it twice. That's important. or I might say something like, you might want to know this one for the quiz on Friday. You know, if I say something like that, that's important information. Or I'll say, this is a critical thing to understand. So sometimes we'll be direct in telling you what's important, but also listen for when the professor says something like louder or emphasized in tone of voice, or slows down or repeats something, or when we get really excited about something. You know, that might be something that's important and that you're paying attention to, and make sure you have that down. So reading, you're going to have to read a lot more in college than you did in high school, and you're going to have to also read so that you remember, read to understand. Now, if you don't understand something while you're reading it, you're not going to be able to remember it. It's not going to sink in there. Your brain's not going to be able to hold it. Maybe for a short time, but not very long. So you want to try to understand what you're reading, and if you're, and so you're. And that's the real struggle sometimes, is getting to that point of, what does he mean by this? Why is he arguing this way? What's he saying this about? But you'll get it. You won't always get it, but you're going to get it more if you're intentional about it. So be reading for understanding, and take brief notes while you're reading. Don't copy everything down. That doesn't help you. But taking short little notes can keep your mind active, and then you go back and look at the notes. And actually, if after you read, you wait an hour or two and then write about what you're reading, that's going to that activates that's like recalling what you read. It strengthens some connections, and you'll remember it better. So when you're reading, it's a good practice to see what you're reading, how it fits into the overall context of the book, and so the table of contents can help you with that. It's good to look at like the chapter headings and the title and the headings. If there's like bold headings throughout, skimming through that can help you see, okay, this is where it's going. It's not enough. Don't just skim through it and, okay, I did it. But doing a brief skim at the beginning is going to then help your mind as then you read it through slower to understand it better. And then while you're reading, I think paying attention. Well, this is giving you all sorts of things you're to pay attention to. I think it's helpful to ask questions, like be asking questions that you think the author is going to answer. Sometimes maybe arguing with them. Sometimes I try to look up and search, like if saying he brings up an idea or concept that I'm not sure I fully understand, but think maybe I ought to understand if I want to know what he's talking about. So then I'll go do a little research, short research, not very fast. I just Google it real quick and look and be like, oh yeah, that's what that is. And then I go back to the book and now I understand what I'm reading, right? Yeah, so don't be afraid to do that. Sometimes you got to do a little research in order just to understand what you're reading, and then it will make sense to you. Yeah, so pay attention to the first and last sentences in each paragraph. Pay attention to all the sentences, but like the main topic, the main idea in each section. You want to be sure you're following that. Sometimes you can get distracted by the smaller arguments he's making, and then you miss the big one. So be paying attention to the big ideas when you're reading, and then what to do after you're reading. Let's see if I can get out of the way again. Nope, that's still in the way. Nope, there we go. Now I'm out of the way. So after you read, writing some questions about what you read and then trying to recall the answers. That's really helpful. Maybe having short sections that you're reciting. I don't think you'll have time to memorize whole long sections of what you're reading, but maybe there's some parts that you need to. But when you finish reading, then just try to review. Remember, what did I just read? And you might take a few notes then. It works works for lectures and for reading. After you've finished a reading or a lecture, let a few minutes pass, and then maybe without looking at the book or your lecture notes, but then try to recall the main ideas. You're strengthening those connections of your synapses there. So learning this way is going to help you to hold things for a longer period of time. Don't just try to cram things in or just get some exposure to things, but really try to understand what you're learning, and it's going to help you to remember it longer. It's a more efficient way to study and to learn. And when you're studying, don't get distracted by other things. Like if you're trying to play a computer game while you're reading your book, it's not going to work, right? So have some time, and some of you have what I have, it's kind of like an undiagnosed ADHD, and you need help focusing. I find it helps me if I put on music that does not have words. If there's words and singing, well, that's a distraction. I need music that is, and there's some music that you can get that is just, actually, I just do a search for ADHD music on YouTube, and you can find some good stuff. I use that. It might help you too. It helps me to stay focused if I have some non-distracting, but music without words, but that keeps kind of my brain going. That helps me to read and to focus whenever I'm doing anything. It may or may not help you. I don't know. So don't just cram the night before an exam, but sometimes you're going to cram the night before an exam too. But you need to be studying all along and then also cram. That was my approach. I don't know. It's probably a bad practice. Probably should avoid cramming, but I get enough nervous about an exam that I want to review everything, and so I would always the night before exam I study more than the rest of the time, and you probably will, but don't make that your only study time for an exam. That's not going to work. You have to study all along the way. So each day in class, taking notes, connecting ideas from the lecture with the ideas from the reading, and as you learn along the way and ask questions and you're discovering things along the way and you're trying to make order out of what you're learning in the class, then when you come to the night before the test, you're just trying to remember and fit together what you already know, rather than trying to learn everything for the first time. So do the assigned reading, and if you're struggling to understand something, ask a question. Don't be afraid to ask questions in class. Don't be afraid to make an appointment with your professor and ask a question. We love that. We're like, wow, a student actually wants to learn. And learning with other people can help you make connections also. And making connections with each other is important too. So you're making connections with each other, but also as you talk about what you're learning in class, is going to help you to see the material in new ways, and you'll be forced to try to recall things that the professor said and recall things from the reading. So working together, if you're strategic and you're with people who are focused and want to learn also, then that can be really, really helpful. Learn with your whole body. Try to learn. We're bodily, physical creations that God has made with our bodies, and it will help you if you are engaging your body. So writing, physically writing I learn more than typing. It sticks with me better if I handwrite it, even though I can never read what I wrote ever again. But when I type it, I can read it. But when I handwrite it, I remember it, and I don't need to read it. Right? But also sometimes I write things on bigger pieces of paper, and then I organize it. When I'm writing a paper, I might write my big ideas on multiple pieces of paper and then move the paper around. So I'm physically manipulating things. That really helps in a lot of ways. It took me a while to discover. I didn't discover that till my PhD program. I didn't do that in college or grad school. But it would have helped me back then had I made things a little more visual. Or when you're learning a language, use the objects around you and don't just keep things in a notebook, but put it in your environment everywhere. Anyways, and finding different ways to learn, mixing it up, taking short breaks, that's all going to help you. Hey, this recording is starting to get a little long here. I don't want to go the whole 50 minutes. I'm just going to point one thing out here. This whole left brain versus right brain thing is more or less been disproven. That's not exactly the way the brain works. However, no, there are two hemispheres to the brain, but it's not divided as neatly as it's dropping here. But still, the main point is helpful. That by engaging different parts of your brain, you'll remember something better. That you're making more connections. So you may try to if you draw something as well as writing about it, or if you try to illustrate something, or try to try to use two different modes, just to connect with different things. Hearing something and reading about it, it's using two different parts of the brain. So that's the main idea here. Just a variety of ways to use your brain is going to help you remember it. This part to whole study method, it's helpful. You need both. I think you want to look at a subject from the whole, and then you want to zoom in on the little parts, and then you want to come back to the whole again. You're kind of going in, like looking at the big picture, then looking at the details, then at the big picture again. And doing that is going to help you. And then sometimes you're going to need to focus in on some of those details. Like you look at the whole picture, then you focus in on one detail. Then tomorrow, you're going to look at the whole picture, and you're going to focus on a different detail and try to remember the one you thought about yesterday. So things like that can help you improve the way you're studying and learning, and you're learning all along the way, rather than trying to cram everything at once. So the study cycle, this is a very helpful part of the book. Helpful enough, we'll probably talk about it again in class. So, but when you're getting ready for a class, first and for a class lecture, you want to skim over what the reading you've done before, or maybe it's the reading related to what the professor's going to be talking about that day, and review a little bit before class. Then attend class. Just being in class makes the biggest difference for success. The students who attend class regularly. Our top students, they're the ones who are in class every day and never miss. It's and the students that struggle and don't make it, they're the ones that are in class only 75% of the time, right? And if you're less than that, you just don't pass the class anyway. So attendance makes a huge difference. But then after you attend class, take a few moments to review the notes that you took, and then polish your notes. Like, you could rewrite some sections, fix them, make some connections between them. Be thinking about how do these notes connect to other notes, and I'm writing a short summary after the lecture. After you've taken your notes, but then write a summary somewhere on your note page of this was the main ideas of the lecture. That's helping you to actively recall and at the same time, you're creating notes that you can study later that are going to help you. But then you do need to review what you've learned, what your notes that you've taken, and so look back at them, at what you read, the notes that you took from. And you should create a cycle where you're regularly looking back at your notes and not just waiting till the night before to look at them, but studying them along the way. And then as you're going, keep assessing how am I doing? Am I remembering to be learning, or am I not doing well in keeping up with learning? And really, the best way, I think, learning to teach. Jesus taught his disciples. He told them to go make disciples. And how did they learn the most to how to obey Jesus? It was probably when they were teaching others to make disciples. The best way you can learn something is to be teaching it to others. So try to teach others. Maybe instead of getting tutoring, become a tutor. Start tutoring others. If you tutor others in something, then that's going to make you learn it. So I highly suggest viewing yourself, study as if you're going to teach it. And if you have the opportunity to teach it, that's the best way to study. Okay, well, I hope that was helpful. To finish off class, oh my goodness, where's my face? There we go. Oh, I'm too close. Well, let's just put me right there in the middle. How about that? So, we've been talking about each week in this class about the Holy Spirit and learning. And I think the Holy Spirit can empower your learning. The primary role of the Holy Spirit is to point to Jesus. So the Holy Spirit empowers us to witness to Jesus. But as you're learning, why are you learning? We're learning. All things hold together in Jesus Christ. So if our learning is helping us to have the mind of Christ and to be like Christ and to serve Christ, I think the Holy Spirit is also going to be helping us in our learning. And the fruit of the Spirit, so the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I might have missed one. But that fruit of the Spirit, I think each of them are actually helpful for learning. And so we talked about love and joy. I want you to be thinking about peace. In fact, in the middle of this storm, it's a good time to think about peace. How does not having peace affect your learning? When you're anxious or nervous, or you're disrupted and distracted, and there's things swirling about you, and you're not able to then focus in. Do you see how all those things distract from learning? But the Holy Spirit gives a peace that's deeper, that even in the midst of a storm and the wind swirling around us, that peace can provide a focus for learning. So it's not, I think, a good way to deal with worry. It's not good to say, hey, just stop worrying. Don't be anxious about it. I found that doesn't help me. Usually there's sources of worry and anxiety that need to be dealt with to overcome it. And if you do struggle with lots of anxiety, And oftentimes people struggle with anxiety don't know it. I did. I even started developing acid reflux, and I got a spot in my back that acts up when I'm under stress. And sometimes that had go on for long periods of time. I didn't realize I was under stress, but I was under a lot of stress. The best way I found dealing with stress is there's healthy ways and there's unhealthy ways. There's many healthy ways, and there's also many unhealthy ways. Unhealthy ways to deal with anxiety involve drinking or drugs, or trying to medicate yourself. Those are bad. That's going to hurt you and destroy you. Other unhelpful ways, people develop eating disorders and things like that because they're the tension. If that's happening, you do need to get some help. And so watch for that. And don't be afraid to ask for help if that's happening. It's going to disrupt your study if you're having that much anxiety. Healthy ways to deal with anxiety. A few more unhealthy. Totally withdrawing. That's an unhealthy way. But also just throwing yourself into distracting habits. Like you can distract yourself with just having to be around people all the time, or having that's dangerous. Or if you're always withdrawn from people all the time, that's not good. Engaging like video games all the time, I think that can be, maybe you're under stress and you're trying to avoid stress. I think there's a variety of ways we unhealthily deal with stress. But the right way to deal with stress, you do need to have rest, so a good night's sleep, and you need a balance of exercise. Exercise, running around out in the sun, a little brief outside activity, it actually helps lower stress. So we don't want to over-spiritualize things. We're physical creatures. But it is also prayer and time alone with meditation, quieting your thoughts, and reading the Bible and praying and seeking the Lord. That will help reduce your stress. So I encourage you to do that every day, a little bit of exercise every day, be eating healthy and appropriately, and taking care of yourself physically, getting enough sleep. But peace is going to come from even a deeper place, isn't it? Than all of that. The peace that comes from knowing. It's sin that causes our anxiety. Really, it's at the heart of it. But the peace comes because Jesus Christ has taken that sin, and so we don't need to stress about it or worry about it. That it's forgiven. You're forgiven, and you're loved, and His Spirit's at work in your heart and your life. He's transforming you. He's helping you to learn. You don't need to stress about these upcoming tests. You're going to get through it. But you do need to study and work diligently. Hey, I'm praying for you through the storm. We'll end it here. Do the requirements under week 6, the workshops and discussion board, little things, whatever's there. And you can download the PowerPoints there and stuff too if you want to look at it. But focus on your other classes. Hey, one last comment. When everything goes virtual, it's challenging for some people. Make a list of all your classes and make sure you check each of your classes that you have on Thursday and Friday, and make sure you've logged in and done the assignment that the professor has asked. And double check, like anything in the announcements, anything in the email from your professor that you need to do that for each of your classes, just so you don't miss something. If any of them you're uncertain, well, just send an email to your professor and say, hey, I just wanted to make sure I did everything. Do that for all your classes except this one. I'm kidding. You can ask me if you need to. I will see you next week. I'm sorry we can't be together. If you would like to meet to talk with me individually, we can do that. But we're not going to meet on Zoom or anything on Friday. It's just this video. But if you would like to meet with me in person or talk through some issues, or on Zoom, then send me an email, and you can use my Calendly link in the. It's on Blackboard someplace. But you make an appointment with me, and we can meet together. So, if any of you are from Florida, know that I'm praying for your family. I know it's difficult. I need to get on and look at the news and see how it's going, actually. So I'll see you next week.